Welcome to this module of Professor Messer's free Microsoft 70680 certification training course. I'm James Messer. In this module, we're going to spend some time creating a reference image. We're going to build an image and a system from scratch that we're then going to use in our next module to actually create a Windows image file from. So we're going to do a lot of work here on the front end to really create the perfect Windows image, because we're going to take this same computer system and deploy it out to many, many different computers in our environment. This comes from the Windows 70680 Configuring Microsoft Windows 7 Certification Exam Requirements, where we need to capture a system image. And we're going to prepare a system for capture, and in our next video, we're actually going to create that WIM file. This will be a very, very useful thing to know, especially if you're going to be deploying a lot of Windows systems. Over the next few videos, we're going to really go through the entire process of creating and deploying one of these images. And there's a lot of steps involved. The first thing we're going to do is plan a Windows 7 installation on a reference PC. We're going to figure out exactly how we're going to install it onto this PC, and we're going to build an automated answer file so that the first time through, when it tries to install everything for Windows 7, you simply turn on the system and it installs everything with exactly the parameters that you've already set beforehand. You don't even have to answer any questions on the screen. We're going to work on that answer file. I'll show you how to create it, how to validate it, and then where to put it to be able to use it to create this image. We're also then going to do the Windows installation. We'll use our answer file that we'll create in this video, and we'll see how it works. We're also going to use Sysprep once we're done to take this system and create this out-of-box experience. You'll see this abbreviated as OOBE. So whenever we configure that with Sysprep and the next person turns on the computer, it's as if it was fresh, as if it came right out of the box directly from the factory. We need to create a bootable Windows PE disk then, and you can do that either on a physical DVD or CD-ROM or on a USB flash drive. You'll boot with that and actually create the image. And we'll store it somewhere. These images are usually pretty large. So we'll put it on a network share. We'll put it on a USB drive that we've connected to our system. We'll store it somewhere that we have enough space for it. And finally, we'll actually deploy it. Now that we have that image saved up, we want to put it on many systems, and we'll start deploying it out to some systems in our environment. In this first step, where we're going to build a brand new Windows 7 system, we could certainly grab a DVD-ROM right out of the Windows 7 package, slide it into a computer, answer all the questions, and do our installation just like we did in the first part of our training video series where we installed it on a clean install. But what we want to do is automate this. This needs to be something that can be done over and over and over again. And you probably will be creating many, many different Windows images. So we're going to create an answer file so that all we need to do is plug in a USB stick that has our answer file on it, put the Windows 7 DVD-ROM in our system, and turn on the power and watch it go automatically from beginning to end. This also gives us flexibility in the future if we ever need to tweak anything. So this makes it much simpler, not only now, but when we need to do this over and over and over again, it becomes much easier to do. We're going to use this program, the Windows System Image Manager. That's one of those programs that comes in the Windows AIK to automate this process. It makes it very easy. We could manually build this answer file in XML in a text editor, but it is not the most simple XML file to work with. So the Windows System Image Manager really automates a lot of this process for us. Here's my Windows Server 2008 R2 system, and if you've been following along in our video series, then you've already installed the Windows AIK on one of your computers. So that's what we're going to use. In our Start menu, you'll find the Windows AIK right there, and we're going to start the Windows System Image Manager. This is what we're going to use to import an image and build the answer file. So obviously now we need an image. We need a Windows image that we're going to use. So I need to take Windows 7, the Windows image there, and pull it onto my system so that I can work with it. And what you'll want to do is go to your Windows 7 DVD-ROM, slide it into your DVD drive. Inside there is a sources directory, and in that sources directory, if we scroll down a bit, you will find an install.wim file. Take that file and copy it down to your hard drive locally so we can work with it. And I've already done that on mine. I've created a directory called WIMS, and inside the WIMS folder is the install.wim file. Now from the Windows SIM, I simply right mouse click where it says select a Windows image and choose the select a Windows image. And I'm simply going to choose my C drive in that WIMS directory and click on install.wim. And it says select an image in the Windows image file. Windows image files can contain many, many different images, and they're all indexed differently. There are 5 separate images in this Windows image file. What I'm going to do is install Windows 7 Ultimate on this computer, so I'm going to choose that image file to work with. It says that the catalog file for Windows Image 7 Ultimate cannot be opened, cannot find the catalog file. That's perfectly normal. We've never worked with this image before. I must have a valid catalog file to continue. Would you like to create one? Absolutely. I'll say yes. And it's going to go through the process of creating a catalog file. And this will take a couple of minutes to complete. Once the image file has been imported, you will see that showing now Windows 7 Ultimate, and we have packages and components that we can work with. This is where we could start changing and modifying and adding to an answer file using a number of these components that are in this image. What we want to do is create an answer file. So I'm going to right mouse click on the answer file window and choose new answer file. And you can see it adds different components here. These match some of the components we have here, but these are the different stages that we go through whenever we're doing a Windows 7 installation. We start off with Windows PE. There's offline servicing that occurs, generalization, specialization, audit the system, audit user, and then the out-of-box experience system. These components that we're going to add are going to match some of the things that we have in this component section. So we're going to customize some very specific things in the installation. And once we start adding some of these things in, you'll start to understand exactly what we're going to be able to do to really customize this out. It seems like there are so many different options on that screen, but fortunately, Microsoft has given us the bare minimum configurations that we would need to have in our answer file to have the entire installation go completely seamlessly and hands-off. This comes from a TechNet article. I've highlighted down here exactly where I pulled that from. This is each one of those sections. We're going to go into the Microsoft Windows International Core WinPE under the UI language, and we're going to set that variable to be en-us. And there's some other variables here for the setup UI, user data, and the image install. Where I have here the user data for the product key, you can see the entire product key. I put zeros, but you would obviously put in the correct product key for yours. Let's try adding a few of these, and we'll start to understand how to use the front end. Let's take that bare minimum of properties that Microsoft has given us and create an XML file that we can use to do the installation. Now, the first one was under the Microsoft Windows International Core WinPE. There's a plus sign next to that. You'll also see there's a setup UI language. We actually have to add both of those into the answer file. I'm going to right mouse click just on that primary option, and you can see one of the sections is to add the settings to pass 1, which is Windows PE. I'm going to choose that, and now I can make changes to this. You can see not only did it add it to my components up here, but now these things can be edited. And I know that what I want to add is the UI language, and it needs to be en-us. All right, that's one parameter that I needed. I also needed to have the setup UI language in there. I'm going to add that setting to one pass. It adds that into the mix, and I've got a blank right here to put that in. Again, it's going to be the en-us. Another option in here was to change the user data to automatically accept the end user license agreement so that you don't have to be there and click that when it goes by. And that's under Microsoft Windows Setup. So that should be down here a little bit more. There it is. And under the setup, there is user data. And here's the user data. And let's add that user data because right in here now, I've got that user data, accept EULA. And you can see this one even has a pull down for us where I can choose true or false. We want true to accept EULA. All we have to do is add each one of those configuration options in here, and we're going to have an XML file that will be perfect for us to use. Now that we've gone through and added all of those requirements that Windows gave us, just the bare minimums, we should have a list of the components in our system. And you can see that we've got it all ready to go. But to make sure that we didn't make any mistakes, we need to validate this answer file. So in the Tools pull-down menu, there's an option here to validate the answer file. When it finishes that, you should have down at the bottom under Messages where it says Validation, no warnings or errors. If you do have warnings or errors there, you want to be sure you resolve those. Otherwise, your installation process that you spent all this time to automate isn't going to work properly. If you were to look at the XML file, you would see this information here. So you can see why using the Windows SIM can really help you. Otherwise, you'd have to manually type in all of these different settings in here. Take your XML file. You want to save it as a file called Autounattend.xml. It's all one word, Autounattend.xml, and just take that XML file and put it onto a flash memory stick. You do not have to make this XML be part of the installation CD. This makes it easy. We can simply take our XML file, take our original Windows 7 DVD-ROM, put them in a computer, turn it on, and let's see what happens. Now let's see if our Autounattend.xml file is going to work. I've got a machine that I've created, an Atlantis Research Lab machine that has a 20 gig hard drive on it. I've also got my Windows 7 Ultimate in the virtual DVD-ROM drive, and in the USB drive, in my USB port, I have a USB memory stick that has the Autounattend.xml file on there. This makes it easy. Windows 7 will simply find that XML file wherever it happens to be. So if I start it up, everything should be found automatically. It'll use that XML file and Windows will start up and use that. It says press a key to boot from the CD or DVD, and I absolutely want to do that. So now it begins loading and installing starting Windows from that virtual DVD-ROM drive. It's going to automatically, during the startup process, see that there is a USB memory stick. It's going to see that on that stick is an Autounattend.xml file, and it's going to use that to perform the installation. As our Windows 7 starts up, we're going to see the same screens that we would normally see. We'd see that setup is starting. What we will not see, however, are all of those automated messages that pop up to specify what type of language we're using for the setup and to click the button to accept the end-user license agreement and some of those normal things. What should happen is it will simply go through the entire installation and never once ask us for anything. And that's exactly what we want to do. That's the whole purpose of having that Autounattend.xml file there. I've sped this up so that we can see what's going on behind the scenes, but one of the things you'll notice now is that it's already gone through the process where we would normally have to put in that language and the end-user license agreement, and now it's already started copying the files that it's going to need. It's going to continue this automated process all the way until the very end. So there you have it. We've gone through an entire Windows 7 setup process, and we never had to touch a key. We never had to click anything with our mouse. It did everything all by itself using our Autounattend.xml file. And now we're at the Windows 7 Ultimate login screen. The out-of-box experience is beginning. But we don't want to jump into the configuration quite yet. Let's do some other things first. One of the challenges with building out one of these really nice reference configurations that you're going to have everybody using is that you have to really keep it in pristine shape. And it has to be such that when someone starts up their computer for the first time, it's really presenting them with the experience that they want. However, we want to still be able to make changes behind the scenes. We want to add files. We want to change things on the computer. So how do you keep that fresh out of the box feeling of an operating system, but yet have customized everything behind the scenes? Well, before we log in for the first time, we're going to use something called audit mode. This is hitting the Shift, Control, and F3 all together. We're going to bypass that Windows welcome screen where we put in our username information. We're going to change the image. You can load applications. You can change drivers. You can do everything from there. So later on, if you wanted to start this image back up again, you can go back into the audit mode and make those changes. Now, there's also some other things you can do. Once you've made all of those changes, you want to refresh the image. You want to do something called a Sysprep, where you're clearing out unique names, other configurations. This is if you have made extensive changes to the image and you really would like to get it back to that open, fresh image that you had with that out-of-box experience. And the way that you do that is to run Sysprep. It is in your Windows System 32 Sysprep, sysprep.exe. We're going to use an out-of-box experience tag, a generalized tag, which clears out unique names and generalizes the operating system, and then shuts down the computer from there. Let's go into our audit mode, see what that looks like, and from inside of there, we'll run the Sysprep. Here we are at our opening Windows 7 Ultimate screen. I'm going to do the Control Shift and the F3, and let's see what happens. Our prompt to put in a username has gone away, and our system has rebooted. And we don't want to boot from that Windows 7 DVD I have in, so we're going to continue to let that go. And I'm going to move this back to the screen so we can see it here. And now we're starting up our Windows process again, but this time what we're going to be using is a built-in administrator account that's used just during this auditing process to be able to get in and use this. Once the computer has been set up for the first time and you have other users in there, you obviously can't use this audit mode anymore. This is really done just before any user configuration is made on that particular Windows operating system version. The Windows 7 audit mode looks very similar to what we've done in the past. You can even see by default, it brings up the Sysprep because it knows you're going to be needing this, because if you were to reboot this system again, it would still go back into the audit mode. So every time it reboots, it goes into this audit mode until we run the Sysprep to get back that out-of-box experience. Let's set a location for the network that we have in here. It's on my home office configuration. The only thing on my local configuration is this home network. We could just as easily choose some of these other prompts in here. I may want to configure this for setting up different configurations here, share with other home computers running Windows 7. I don't want to do any of that in the network configuration. And from here, it's a regular Windows 7 desktop. I can install applications, I can update systems, I can run patch installations. I can really get this system to exactly where it needs to be. And at that point, I've now got a system that I feel good about distributing out to other computers. So that way, when they get this image installed onto their machine, they don't have to go through that patching process. I've already done it one place, and that's right here. After we install all of our patches, we install applications that we'd like everyone to have access to, and maybe we've also loaded a few extra utilities that we use for troubleshooting. We now want to take the system and repackage it up with that out-of-box experience. We'll use the Sysprep. We could, of course, use the command line Sysprep that you saw earlier, or you can use the graphical front end that you have here. Let's do the out-of-box experience. I want to generalize, and let's choose shutdown once we're done with that and click OK. Our system cleans up the operating system, generalizes it, gets it ready for the next person, sets it up to do that out of box, and in this case, is just going to simply shut down, and it will be ready for us to do an image system on it using ImageX, and we'll do that in our next video. When you run Sysprep with that generalized tag, that /generalize, or you check that generalize box on Sysprep, it is really creating a very generic version of Windows 7 that you could then install on other pieces of hardware that might not be exactly the same as the system you use to actually create the image to start with. That adds a lot of flexibility. But one thing to keep in mind is whenever you use generalize, it also resets your Windows activation. After all, it thinks you're moving it to another computer. You're obviously going to need to license that again. You can only do that 3 times. So you want to be careful about how many times you're going to run that generalize. There are some changes you can make to that. You can make it so that it never resets the licensing configuration, or that it gives you more than 3 chances to do that. And that's one of the things that we can change in our Autounattend.xml file. So just one of the things to be careful with licensing whenever you're working with these images, you can't have every system licensed with exactly the same key unless you have a very specialized licensing agreement with Microsoft, and not too many people have that. So keep that in mind when you use the Sysprep command, that you don't over-license your system. We've now got a reference system that is ready to be imaged, and in our next video, that's exactly what we're going to do. But before we go there, let's see what we've learned about this video. Our first question: which Windows utility can assist with the creation of an Autounattend.xml file? Well, we used that a lot. We went through and changed a lot of configurations in our Windows SIM or System Image Manager. Our next question is, which utility prepares a system for the initial out-of-box experience? Well, we just used that one, didn't we? That was our Sysprep command. And lastly, which Windows mode allows you to bypass the Windows welcome so that you can customize this reference image? And if you recall, we used our Control-Shift and F3 to get into audit mode. Well, that covers our requirements for this creation of a reference image. We've now got a system that is ready to go for our imaging process, where we've learned how to prepare an image for capture, and in our next video, we'll actually create that WIM file. If you'd like to watch any of our absolutely free Microsoft Windows 7680 videos, you'd like to participate in our message boards or much more, you can visit our website at professormesser.com.